If your team's content is unclear, inconsistent, or just not getting enough traction, it might not be a content problem, but a leadership problem. You might be the problem. Join executive coach Lori Bruns and me, host Doreen Morin-van. Season 5 is kicking off tonight on Strategy Talks. We are going to have a bold conversation about what small team leaders get wrong about content strategy and how to fix it fast. We'll unpack the hidden leadership habits that block content flows, dilute the brand voice, and create endless bottlenecks. You will walk away with practical ways to improve internal alignment, team communication, and strategic clarity so your content actually reflects who you are and where you're going. This is perfect for founders, team leaders, marketers, and consultants just like you, building systems that scale. This is Strategy Talks. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Doreen Morin-van.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Strategy Talks. We took a 4-week break over the 2025 holiday season. It is now January 13. I'm actually having to look what date it is. We are live with the kickoff episode of season 5. Yes, this is year 5 of Strategy Talks, and it's the season of content strategy for small teams. I'm very excited to introduce you to my guests in just a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome all of you back to Strategy Talks. Welcome to those of you who are here live. If you're watching, put in the comments where you're watching from and maybe what platform, whether you're on LinkedIn or maybe you're on Facebook or YouTube watching this live. And if you're watching this on the replay, welcome everybody as well. Special shout out to those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. We always appreciate you being here as well. One new thing to note is today we kick off the brand new community on School, Strategy Talks community, where you'll meet former podcast hosts, me, right, and podcast guests, and you will also meet those who listen to Strategy Talks and who watch Strategy Talks, because listeners and viewers like you are invited into the community to continue the conversations we're having right here live on air. So I am going to bring onto the stage with me my friend Lori. How are you today, Lori?
Hey, Doreen. Good to see you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to kick off season 5. And it's funny for those of you who have watched this show before, it has a little bit of a different look. We have Strategy Talks right bold at the top if you're watching this, and a little bit of a look. And we were just actually figuring that out in the green room. Oh, we need a backdrop. So nothing like flying by the seat of your pants when you're a podcast host. But again, year 5, we know how to do this. So I'm very excited that you're here, Lori. So let me just have you kick this off. You work with leaders across industries to help them communicate with more clarity and lead with more impact, especially in small, fast-moving teams. So for those of you who are watching this and meeting you for the first time, Lori, can you give us a quick snapshot of the kind of coaching that you do and the challenges you help leaders solve before we dive into content strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me. I am an executive coach with 25 years of coaching and strategic leadership development. I've been doing this for a very long time. And some of the challenges are the basic stuff that everyone has always had, which is communication, understanding how to use language that lands on people so that they follow you versus you having to push or pull them. And that is the number one thing that I see across different organizations industries. Everyone is always looking to really hone in on how to communicate at their best.
All right. All right. That makes a lot of sense. So when we talk about mistakes that leaders might make, it's not something they want to hear. You're coaching, you want to say, you want to build people up, but sometimes you have to point out the things that aren't working, right? Are there some things that leaders often do, or some leaders do, that you've seen that directly impact how their team shows up online or how their team creates content? Are the leaders sometimes part of that block, that roadblock or that bottleneck?
What I have seen in my experience is that leaders most of the time are the creatives. And to communicate to the doers, sometimes they don't get across their message like they want to. In their mind, they have it all planned out, though the execution verbally sometimes doesn't happen. Then the other thing with this is we all have different types of learning styles, and everybody learns and communicates very differently. There is auditory, visual, kinesthetic, and tactile learning styles, 4 of them. And we inherently go to the one that we like the most. But some of us use all 4, some of us use 2, some of us use 3. And one thing that I like to tell my leaders is get to know your people. Because once we really get to know our people, we can ask great questions like, so when you're learning something new, what's your preferred method of taking in information? And as leaders, sometimes they don't do that off the bat. Sometimes they'll have a team that they inherited. And I like to tell my leaders, take the time to get to know your people. Listen to the words they say, what resonates with them. And I'm a big proponent of DISC or any other assessment that helps you understand who you are, right? When people take assessments, I say to them, this is learning about who you are first. Know thyself to know others. Because when you know who you are, you get to adjust and pivot and be able to meet people halfway, if not all the way.
Yeah, that's great. I have an example of this that just happened to me. I was at a doctor's appointment meeting a new doctor a couple of months ago, and this was a specialist. So I went to a kind of a big medical hospital, pretty advanced. And the nurse during the intake process asked me if I knew what kind of learner I was. And she asked me those 4 things. And then so once I had gotten the info, I met with the doctor came back and handed me a piece of paper with pictures and a couple of sentences of what my diagnosis was. And I looked at this and go, oh, this is awesome. And he goes, well, this is how you learn, right? You just had that. You answered the question. And I'm thinking, because I had said I learned by seeing, by reading, but also in visuals. So they had that ready for me. I'm thinking that if I had said, I learned by listening, maybe they had a podcast or a video for me. I don't know. But I was like blown away, kind of the customer service in this medical setting. So if you're watching this and if you're listening to this, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, wow, I've never thought about this, you can do this with your customers. If you're providing them information is, right kind of standard, how do you learn? Because truthfully, I was blown away, and I held onto that paper. I brought it home, was able to show my family. It was I took pictures of it. It was really, really helpful. So I love that you say that as a leader, that's a great place to start. Know what kind of learner you are, but then also teach your team. Now, Can you just, and I'm fascinated with this. Can you go over those 4 things and just kind of tell people what kind of content goes with each of those?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so we start with visual. We see things, right? So what I can tell you is that a visual learner needs to see you doing it, possibly a video that they can stop, go back, look at, anything that stimulates the vision. Now, here's the other thing. What not to do with a visual learner is to give them a lot of stuff. That's clutter to them.
Okay.
So a lot of sticky notes, a lot of color, less is more for a visual learner as well. So when I do my presentations, I keep in mind that I have all these learners. So my visual stuff is less is more. That's my go-to on my, slide deck. I'm coming up on a webinar this week and they're like, do you have your stuff? And I was like, yeah, you're welcome to share it. It's pictures. It's, for me to know, but not really a lot of content. They're like, okay, whatever. But yeah, so when it comes to a visual learner, they want to see you do it. They'll use a video, something that they can see. Sometimes they like to read, but it's mostly seeing the thing done than reading.
Okay. All right. How about the next one?
Okay. So auditory. They want to hear it. 90% of the people usually do visual and auditory at the same time. They like to hear things. So I'm going to give you an example of myself. I retain the best when I have an audio book and the actual book in hand. So it's like someone's reading to me, and that is how I retain the best. I've shared this many times in my trainings of my leaders, and they're like, I've never even thought about that. I was like, yeah, it's something that really just solidifies. So anything that they can hear, a podcast, music to it, having a little bit of music, just honing in on that. That being said, because we got to do a little bit of what not to do, a lot of noise, they can't focus, right? Because they're auditory. If they have dogs barking, this going on, they'll hear everything. Okay. So kind of like keep the noise level down and focused on the learner.
Okay.
So visual, auditory, I always have to go through them all. Kinesthetic, movement. So I got my start as a high school Spanish teacher.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm fluent in Spanish, and when I was teaching, I would tell my students, walk and talk, because your brain will help you memorize. And the kinesthetic kids that moved around, they were able to do so much better. Having people in sessions that move them around, letting them do things, not sitting hour after hour after hour. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. The person might need to move around. They can't sit in a seat.
Okay.
They're the one that usually is fidgeting. Mm-hmm. That means they are more of a kinesthetic learner, need to move around. So I think you know this about me. I have twin boys.
Yes.
So they are 20. They'll be 20 tomorrow, Doreen. Can you believe it?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And they do well with not having to sit. They are active children, mm-hmm. young men. Mm-hmm. And they've always been like that. My one son, Enzo, he walks around as he does his studying and stuff like that. So
yeah, makes sense.
And then Traver actually listens to a little bit of music. He's auditory, and he can study better with just a little bit of music in the background to kind of keep him focused.
I think somebody who's listening to this and who doesn't know what their own learning style is are going to be like, what? I have a question for you. When I listen and then I doodle, Is that
Okay,
is that the last one?
so tactile touch, right?
Yeah.
So it's a form of kinesthetic movement, but you're actually touching.
Yeah.
You're doing notes. So yeah, that's your
That's the kind
two.
of learner I am. If I hear it and I can write it down, I don't have to remember it. So
Mhm.
a phone number, if you tell me a phone number, I get completely lost. But you tell me a phone number and I write it down, I can then tear up the piece of paper because now I've heard it, written it, seen it, and then I have remembered it. So it's super interesting. So once we know this as a leader, we figure out how our team learns. How does that open up communication?
So once we figure out how they learn, then we could go a little bit deeper and say, okay, now that you learn this way, as a leader, how can I support you with things you need to learn, tasks you have to do? So if you are a visual person and someone's just talking at you, you're not going to really understand all the information that's coming at you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if it's a visual person, the leader might want to be like, okay, we're going to do all this. Want to take notes? Whatever that person needs, do you need to see me do it? It just helps with getting the right words across in a way that lands with the person.
Okay.
And so depending on what the task is going to depend on how the leader communicates with that person.
Yeah. So now that we have a leader, we're talking about content. Let's talk about a brand voice. If we have these different communication styles inside a team, could that lead to inconsistent messaging if that's not corrected? Because a brand voice would say, for example, you've got kind of a nerdy company, an agency, a tech company, maybe SaaS, and they kind of are nerdy and they're using different things. But what if the leader is the nerdy guy, but nobody else is, and maybe the target audience isn't? And so you get this mumble jumble of brand voice. How do you, because that's the part of the content strategy that, as a content strategist, that I work on with leadership. I try to tell them it's not just your voice, right, that we want to duplicate online, but it's your brand voice. So how do we communicate that voice, make sure it's the right one, but it also is the right one for your ideal client, your ICP, right? So how do we work on that? How do you have any methods of drawing out that brand voice and making sure that it's the same across, especially if you have different communication styles?
So I have a question that I like to use.
Okay.
And it's more of like a question statement. And I tell my leaders, this is something that you can utilize with everyone.
Sure.
So I like to tell them to use this. Tell me in your own words what you just heard from me so that I know I have been clear on my communication with you.
Wow, that's a good one. So you have them repeat it back to you.
In their own words.
In their own words. Oh.
Because with their own words, are they in left field? Are they, in the field at all? So
yeah,
it's on you. Tell me in your own words what you heard from me, so I know I have been clear in my communication to you.
Oh, I love that. This is definitely going to be a clip. This is going to be awesome. All right. So you help leaders kind of think on their feet. You help them get ready, right? How can that kind of agility, that kind of, fast-paced moving iterations help teams respond to content opportunities or challenges? For example, a couple of years ago, Barbie came out and everybody was jumping on the Barbie trend, right? I'm thinking what a more recent trend is, but having that communication with your team, how do you either teach that or explain the importance of that agility of, you've got to move fast. You've got to communicate better. You've got to jump on these opportunities, especially when it comes to online content that you're creating for your team.
Right. So my number one tip is to always communicate with your people. We after 2020, communication just really went. And what I have seen is that with online, with Zoom videos, there is some stagnation when it comes to communication, because at times people are not always present.
Right.
So I believe that having constant communication, not waiting a month, not waiting 2 weeks, doing what you can to communicate with your people so you learn their language. And once you learn their language, you can speak to them more efficiently and effectively, and it will land faster.
Oh, and I love that answer, because in agility, we meet more, in the world of agility, in the agile space, we meet almost every day, right? It's a daily stand up. It's the exercise of, what did you work on yesterday? What are you working on today? And where are you stuck? And how can we help each other? It's a very quick check-in daily. That's a piece of communication to move the projects forward. So if your content strategy is stuck because one person isn't either approving it or not doing their job, by communicating very briefly every single day, if every single day, 3 days in a row, the answer of where we are stuck is because Jenny didn't complete her assignment, then where the bottleneck is, right? The bottleneck is Jenny, and we need to communicate differently to that person because now they're stuck.
And so another question for Jenny in that case is, what is holding you up that we can support you with?
That's a really good one. Yeah. And then we can remove that bottleneck and move forward.
Right.
So what if, we were in the beginning of the year, kickoff season 5, yay, we're doing great. Say that we've got, you're working with a leader who has decided, 2 days after Christmas to work on their strategy, and say they updated their mission and their vision for their company. And yet they went back to work and sort of kind of forgot maybe to tell their team about new expectations. How would you handle that? Would you call them on it? How would you prepare somebody for that? Or what do you think would happen if that happens? Because, I updated strategy talks. I did some strategy, but I'm me and myself. This is my team. I can do that because I'm not leading anybody in the space of Morin media. So it's easier for me to do that because then I know. But what if somebody decides to do that? And what could happen when that's misaligned?
Well, first and foremost, I always remind my leaders that if they are going to change the mission, vision, and values of a company, they need to start the project off. Okay? They need to own it. And then share with their team, hey, this is what I have come up with. Please tell me what you would like to add and or delete before making it solidified. I think that when there is buy-in from the team on the vision, mission, and values, they have buy-in. So it doesn't have to be a long process. Most people are like, it's good, whatever, right? And then once everyone has given a little input, you already have the buy-in, and then working it into the everyday things that they do. For example, I have worked with leaders that said, I can't motivate my team. Okay. Does your teammate know what they are doing? Like what the impact is? And the first thing I say to them is bring out that mission, vision, and value statement that you have. Let's say that Jenny is punching holes. Well, does she know what punching holes end result is? Does she understand that without her holes punched, they couldn't do A, B, C, X, Y, and Z? I'll never forget, I was doing a training, and motivation was one of the things that they were struggling with. And they were making toys, educational toys for children. And the quality and the product was all right. They wanted them to be more in line with just feeling proud about it and motivated to do a really good job. And I said to them, have they ever seen a child using one of your products? And they're like,
wow, that's powerful.
I said, that's what you need to show them. You need to have your people see the child unbox the product and start using it.
That will be motivation enough. Wow, that's a good one. Wow, Lori, you're bringing it today. All right, so this is awesome. I'm gonna put something out there that you might or might not agree with, but I've seen this over and over and over. I've worked with lots of companies in my 15 years as a social media manager, social media strategist, content strategist. And more often than not, the bottleneck in content creation or content approval lies in the approval process, that the stakeholder, whoever wants to approve it, and it shouldn't, my opinion is it shouldn't always be a stakeholder, but that somebody is holding up, some leader is holding up the approval process. When you as a coach find out that your clients are the one holding up the content creation process, whether that's, the webinar that you wanted to host and 2 weeks later they still haven't picked a guest, or they still, aren't sure what the, what questions they're going to ask, or, maybe this leader said they were going to speak at a conference, and everybody's ready to go, but they never, put the application in, or, whatever it is. What do you tell a leader who basically self-sabotages with that? How do you move that team? But how do you address that? Because in content creation, often there's a lot of waiting around, you make, and even, I make edits and get approval, and that, or make edits, ask for approval, make more edits. And, the process can be really, really drawn out, and it can get frustrating for the ones on the line creating content. So how do you address that with a leader?
Okay. As an executive coach, if my leader was dragging their feet, I would start with a question like, what does success look like for the end of this project? And that lets you know if they know even themselves what the success should look like.
Yeah.
And if they can tell me what success looks like, my next question would be like, okay, now that we know what success looks like, what steps can you take to get there? Sometimes they don't understand what steps they really need to take.
Very good. I like that.
And then to add, if I may,
yes,
which of these steps do you feel is going to give you the most momentum to keep you going? Usually it's just getting that ball rolling sometimes. An analysis paralysis, right?
Right. And and I think what you're holding up is a mirror to them, and saying, you're answering the questions. You get frustrated with your team or not getting a project done, but here's the mirror, here you go. I love that. Those are very good questions. It's really excellent. So we're getting to the half hour. We said we would go as long as we want. I have a good question that I would like you to spend a little bit of time on before we
absolutely
wrap this up. If you could get every small team that's listening, maybe there's a leader here listening or somebody on the team that wants to improve communication, to do one thing this Q1 of 2026 to improve how to communicate and create together as a team, what is the one thing that you would say, go work on this?
Go work on getting to know who you are as a communicator. You really need to know yourself first before you can start learning about other people.
All right. And so you have an assessment. You mentioned it earlier. DISC. Is that yours? Is that a national recognized?
No, it's nationally recognized. And there's so many others. So many others. I like DISC. I like Myers-Briggs. As an executive coach, I got plenty of assessments. Yeah. And it depends on what the team's hurdles are. Right. Where their gaps are and what we can utilize to bridge the gap and close it up.
Yeah. So if you've been listening, if you're watching, and if there's definitely a miscommunication issue within your team that affects content strategy, creation, completion of projects, this quarter, get everybody on your team to complete an assessment, right? That's what you recommend. Yes. And then start talking about how you can bridge the gap on how, whatever you might say the sky is blue and somebody hears Doreen's mad, like those are different things, right?
And it truly is that. So once you know thyself and you get to know others, what these assessments help you really do is communicate in an effective way. Conflict goes down. Just productivity goes up. There's so much benefit to really understanding how the leader, yourself, communicates, how you send and receive information, and then getting to know your team. Because there's going to be so many different people that learn and communicate in distinct ways. And I'm not saying that you have to know everybody's everything. But if you can understand where they're coming from and like how their brain works, that's a no-brainer.
That's gold. So that is a great plan of action for somebody's come all the way to the end of this first episode of season 5 of Strategy Talks. If you don't know what kind of learner you are, if you need to name it or you don't know it, take an assessment, get everybody else on your team and have that communication conversation about, hey, we're having Zoom meetings, but maybe we should also have a transcript write-up, or maybe we should have, summary notes, or, maybe somebody needs to draw it out, whatever the plan of action is. But yeah, understanding that communication uses all the different senses and everybody uses different things. I love this. Before I give you the floor here at Strategy Talks, Lori, and let people know how they can find you, I want to do a quick plug for Strategy Talks, the community. It is brand new. Lori, you're invited to it. I hope you join after tonight. It's going to be a community where former guests as well as guests of season 5 will be invited to come. You, if you're watching this, if you're listening to the podcast, are invited. It's a school community called Strategy Talks Community. There's a link on the screen right now that is showing. I will make sure to put it in the show notes of every single episode. We'd love for you to come. We'd love for you to ask questions of the guests, to network, to meet each other. If you are hosting your own podcast and you're looking for a guest like Lori, come into the community and connect with people. This community is a long time coming. I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and it's going to be great. So this year we're building it one person at a time. If you made it all the way to the end, you should come and join our community in school. I really would like you to meet Lori and some of the other people that are already in there, previous guests of the show. And hopefully soon we'll have a bunch of listeners and viewers in there as well. So Lori, I'm going to give the floor to you. If somebody listened, made it to the end, where can they find you? How can they best connect with you?
Awesome. Thank you, Doreen. If you or your organization is looking for an executive coach, leadership trainer, speaker. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, first and foremost, at Lori Bruns, or you can email me at Lori, Lori, at LoriBruns.com. My name is Bruhns. And you can find me on Facebook as well. All those platforms is where I am, and I'd love to support you and your organization be better communicators.
Awesome. Well, I think this was a great conversation, and I'm hoping that by having the community, right? So now we're meeting, people can view strategy talks, they can listen to strategy talks. Now they get to be with the people of strategy talks. This is actually a great, I'm not saying let's touch each other, but that's a whole different thing. But maybe we get to meet in real life. And that would be another sense, right? Then you get to see them, hug them, and all of that. So eventually that is my plan, to have a community where people want to meet up in real life, whether that's at a conference or somewhere else. So I'm very excited that you were here with me today and that we made it to the end of Strategy Talks. If you're watching the clock like I am, I've decided this year we're not going to watch the clock. If all the questions get asked and we are running over time past 30 minutes, that's going to be fine. If you made it to the end, you understand that every single question we asked and answered was part of this conversation. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the first episode of season 5 of Strategy Talks. Lori, I'll see you in the Strategy Talks community on School. And thank you so much, everyone, for being with us live or watching on the replay. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.